everybody. I'm Tony.
Hi, Tony.
To put my eyes on, I am very pleased to, as all of you I'm sure meet Dr. Minkoff. Graduated from the University of Wisconsin Medical School in 1974. He was elected Phi Beta Kappa of medical schools. That is an extremely high honor. The prestigious Alpha Omega Alpha Honors Medical Fraternity for very high academic. He has then worked for over 20 years in traditional medicine, helping people. Then he switched, and he and his wife, Sue, founded LifeWorks Wellness Center. As Doreen said, they have progressed, helped people from all over the world. LifeWorks is now one of the country's foremost alternative health clinics, offering wide-range, cutting-edge, leading medical help for everybody. In 2000, Dr. Minkoff founded Body Health, a nutrition company which offers unique range of dietary supplements to the public and practitioner. Body Health's mission is to educate doctors and the public with the correct know-how to improve the body's condition and provide them with the products needed to do that, which is why we're here, to find out what helps us live the best life, the healthiest life we can have. Dr. Minkoff is passionate about fitness and is a 38-time, Ironman finisher. Yes. Yes. Including 8 appearances at the Ironman World Championship in Hawaii. He also writes 2 weekly newsletters, which you can find on this little flyer right here. The Optimum Health Report and the Body Health Fitness newsletter. So please, everybody, invite, with a warm round of applause, Dr. Minkoff.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
So I want to make this informal, so if I say something that doesn't make sense or you don't agree with or you don't understand, just go like this and I'll try to explain it further, or we can talk about it further, okay?
Sounds
All right. Like she said, I was traditionally trained. I came out of medical school and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I started a rotating internship at the University of California in San Diego. And my first rotation was pediatrics, and about 2 months into it, you're supposed to do 3 months of pediatrics, 3 months of surgery, 3 months of internal medicine, 3 months of other stuff. My first 3 months were pediatrics, and at the end of 2 months, the head of the pediatric area said, "You'd be a good pediatrician," and so I decided to be a pediatrician. I was there 3 years, and then I didn't know what I wanted to do after that, so I figured I could stay in the program some more, and I did a fellowship in infectious diseases. San Diego was right on the border. It was the late 70s. There were a lot of immigrants from Thailand, and the war was just winding down, and a lot of the Hmong people came from Thailand, and the area was just full of exotic tropical diseases that these people brought in. And so I got interested in infectious disease and did that for a few years, and then I was on the faculty at University of California as an attending physician. In 1990 we moved to Florida, and I took up emergency medicine and did that until about 2002. But in 1995 my wife got sick. She's also a triathlete, and she decided that she didn't like the look of the mercury fillings that were in her mouth, and that she would get them switched out. And she went to a dentist in St. Pete who didn't really understand that you can't just remove mercury by drilling it out with no protection, because as you may know, mercury is a very toxic poison, and very teeny amounts of it are toxic to especially nerve cells and brain cells. If a mercury thermometer would break and spill, or one of those new CFL mercury light bulbs would drop, and you would get mercury fumes all over, nobody would be allowed in the area until the EPA came in, and they have a meter that's a mercury vapor meter. And they would take the meter, and there would have to be less than 10 parts per million of mercury in the environment before it was considered safe. Now, last year, for a couple of years, we had a mercury vapor meter, and we would stick it in people's mouths when they came into the clinic and check them. And we found that very few people that had any mercury, or nobody who had any mercury in their mouth, met that criteria of less than 10 parts per million. Most people were in the 100, 200, 500, 600 parts per million of mercury vapor coming off of their fillings at rest with an open mouth,
Wow.
which the EPA then would consider a toxic waste dump in your mouth, which would then, you breathe those things, they come into your soft palate, you swallow them, they track up the nerves into your brain.
You kiss people?
What's that?
You kiss people?
If you kiss people, exactly.
Right.
So she had gone to a dentist who didn't understand this, and he took a high-speed drill and drilled that mercury out, and that mercury with a high-speed drill aerosolizes, because mercury boils at 110 degrees. So when you put that drill in there, it boils and it went all over and it got into her brain, and she woke up one day and she couldn't lift her arm, and she couldn't move her leg. And a neurologist looked at her and said, well, it looks like you have MS. So that didn't make any sense to me. She was always eating very well, and she was exercising a lot, and she was taking care of herself, and why should she get MS? And one evening I bumped into she's a nurse, and she has a home health care nursing agency. And in the same complex, I was picking her up one night, a dentist moved in who was a natural dentist. And I bumped into him in the parking lot, and I said, hey, my wife had a mercury out, and then a few weeks later she's got this MS. Do you think the two things are related? And he says, yeah, they're related, probably, but you should get educated in it because very few people understand this or know anything about it. He says, you should go to Seattle. There's a doctor there who trains doctors and learn about it. And I went to Seattle and I learned about it, and I came back. We did the testing on her. She was mercury toxic. And then we developed treatments to get her better, and she got totally better, and she's completely fine. But she had a girlfriend with chronic headaches, and she says, well, maybe something's wrong with me, can you test me? And then somebody else had high blood pressure, and then somebody else had, their father had a heart attack at age 50, and he was 50, and he was worried about it. And so in the back of her home health care nursing agency clinic, on my off days from the emergency room, because the emergency room was shift work, so it was 12 hours on, 3 or 4 days a week, I set up a little clinic in the back of her office, and I started to see people, and it grew very fast into where I left the emergency room and we started the clinic that we have now. So we see all kinds of people with all kinds of problems. Some of the people are just interested, they're pretty healthy and they're interested in anti-aging or better performance or better health. Some of the people are interested in, they're high-end athletes and they're interested in super high-end performance. And some of the people are chronically ill, and they've been through the doctor wagon, and they've taken lots of medications, and they haven't gotten better or they've gotten worse. And they're looking for answers to actually solve their health problems and not get more medications to try to make them better. So some of these people have chronic fatigue, and some of them have cancer, and some of them have MS or lupus or diabetes or arthritis. I saw a new guy today who flew down here from Massachusetts with MS. He's in an electric wheelchair. He has to wear a catheter because he doesn't have bladder control.
Advanced MS?
What's that?
Advanced stage MS?
Yeah, sort of medium advanced stage MS. And he said he's been seeing neurologists at Boston's famous, Boston is famous as a medical center. So he's seeing doctors in those medical centers associated with Harvard Medical School. And they've got him on a bunch of medications, but his progression has been downhill. He's been getting worse. So I talked to him, and I sat him down on the table, and I opened his mouth, and there wasn't one tooth in his mouth that wasn't completely packed with mercury fillings.
Wow.
With silver, what are called silver fillings. There's a gray filling. But that gray filling is 50% mercury, and then with the mercury is copper, tin, zinc. And silver. So I said, this is probably your problem. And we did some energetic testing on him, and it turns out that his brain was full of mercury. And And I think that he actually has a good prognosis, because if we can get this stuff out of his body, first clean up his teeth and get this stuff out of his body, he will probably be able to recover some of his neurological function and get better. Now, you know, we never know how top you can go, but I know if he doesn't do anything, it's going to get worse because he's being poisoned all the time. So that would be sort of a typical kind of case. Now, we are seeing lately a lot of patients with cancer, and we have an approach to cancer which is quite different than the usual. One of the problems with cancer is that if you look at the graph from 1920, so this is survival, and this is time. And this is 1920, and this is 2000. And these are patients with stage 4 cancer. Now, stage 4 means it's not just in one place. It's in places far away too. So a stage 4 breast cancer would be in the breast, maybe in the bones, in the liver, in the brain. A stage 4 prostate cancer would be in the prostate, but then distantly, in the bones, in the lungs, metastatic.
Right.
Okay? It's gone other places. So here's 5%. This is survival for at least 5 years. Hasn't changed since 1920. Okay? So the war on cancer, hundreds of millions and billions in research on prolonging survival in people with serious disease has not changed the number of people who survive for 5 years. Hasn't changed. Yes?
Have you heard of Nurse Casey or Asiac?
Yes. Now, the only thing that's documented to show change on this lifestyle.
What is it?
Lifestyle.
Oh,
Okay?
absolutely.
Now, if you talk to most people, or most oncologists, it doesn't matter what you eat, it doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter who you associate with, it doesn't matter.
Just get the chemo.
Just get the chemo. Get the chemo, keep your fingers crossed, and be prepared to throw up and lose your hair. Okay? So, the progress that's being made in cancer is the progress in how can you optimize lifestyle and nutrition and detoxification. Because everyone with cancer, you know, here's the body, and things go in. We live in an environment which is very unfriendly. There's pesticides and chemicals and heavy metals and solvents and dyes and drugs, which, you know, and styrofoams and aluminums and BPA plastics. You know, like these cans are lined with plastic liners. And we're exposed to it all the time. And these things, this comes into our body. Cosmetics and skin creams and toothpastes. If you keep track in the course of a day, the number of exposures you have that you either breathe or come in through your skin or come in through your mouth, it's in the thousands every day. Because everything is made out of artificial stuff, and it's all, it's just, you can't, there's no escaping it. So it's coming in. If you can be as careful as you can, and one of the biggest ones now is EMF. Wi-Fi, electronics, cell phone towers. You know, hits us. Because our bodies work on very teeny little microcurrents. You know, all the communication is a sodium ion moves this way and a potassium ion moves that way, and there's a little teeny current and it stimulates a nerve and it tries to keep everything in balance. And then you put that thing in an area where there's all this scattered, dirty electricity around, and it messes up the system. I saw somebody last week where the dirty electricity was actually coming from their own body, because they have mercury fillings next to gold ones. And when I put a meter on the gold filling, a voltmeter, a Radio Shack $28 voltmeter, I put one of the electrodes on the gold filling and one of the electrodes on the silver filling, and it measured 235 millivolts 24 hours a day coming out of that tooth,
Wow.
going to the biggest nerve trunk in their body. The nerve that serves the jaw is the biggest trunk that comes out of the brain, and it goes straight to the brain. Now that nerve fires at 70 millivolts. If you hit it with 70 millivolts, it'll fire. Now we've got 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 235 millivolts all the time, putting pressure, stress on that system.
And what was he seeing you for?
He was seeing me for chronic headaches.
Wow.
I had a lady earlier, she owned a cosmetic studio on the other side of the bay. Very, very successful business owner. And she came in because she had headaches. And her solution to the headaches was to take Tylenol, because no doctor could figure out what was wrong with her headaches. So she was taking 25 Tylenol a day for about 20 years.
Sounds good.
Well, her gut and her liver and her kidneys and everything else, luckily she was able to handle that. But when I put the voltmeter in her mouth, she was about 270. And I sent her over to the dentist. And the dentist took out that quadrant, that gold crown and that mercury filling. He did the first quadrant. And she said by the time she got from the operatory to the front desk, the whole head pressure that she'd been fighting for 20 years was gone.
Wow.
And it never came back,
Wow.
and she never took another Tylenol.
Wow.
So these things can have effects. Now, some people might not get headaches from that. They might get high cholesterol from that, or they might get high blood pressure from that, or they might get ulcers from that, or they might get breast cancer from that. Because as you may or may not know, the teeth, the nerve pathways for all of the parts of the body go through the teeth. If you look at acupuncture model is that there are these meridians, there are these pathways that go through the body. And the pathways go through the teeth. So why are teeth called eye teeth or stomach teeth? Maybe you're It's because those are the pathways that those teeth are on. Now the eye teeth are the canines. Those are liver gallbladder teeth. And that meridian includes the eyes. Okay? Stomach teeth are the molars on the top and the premolars on the bottom. The stomach meridian in acupuncture is thyroid, breasts, ovaries. Okay? Many people that I see who have breast cancer have root canals or bad teeth on their stomach teeth. And they go together. There's a cause and effect relationship. So the things that go on in the mouth and the toxicities that go on can affect the whole body. So anyway, we have this toxin load that's coming in. And if there's not a big drain in the bottom here where the toxin load can get out, then that bathtub's going to fill up. And when it fills up and overflows, then the person doesn't feel well. And part of the problem is they don't feel well, like they don't sleep well, or their mood isn't right, or they've got chronic pain, and they go to the doctor and they say, I'm just not feeling well. I don't have the energy I used to. Or I feel kind of down and I don't even know why. I don't have any reason to. My husband's nice to me and I have a good boss. I'm not, it's all right. And he does a blood panel, a CBC and a Chem 25, and he does a physical exam, and it's all normal. And then what does that person leave the doctor's office with?
Some prescription.
Less money.
Prozac.
Okay? There's something like 30 million people in this country on this or one variation of that. The doctor says, well, it means you must be nuts. Your exam's normal, your screening lab work's normal. You've got stuff, you must be nuts. So then people take it.
It's all in your head.
Yeah. It's all in your head. And now children. 10% of children now are on amphetamines.
Ritalin and, oh,
You know,
terrible.
Ritalin and these kind of drugs are amphetamines. And if you give someone an amphetamine and you do what's called a SPECT scan, it's a special scan of their brain to see what's lighting up on the amphetamines. Well, this pattern is exactly the same as if you gave them cocaine or if you gave them amphetamines.
Wow.
And so children are being kicked out of school because they're not allowed back unless they get the amphetamines. And the schools get a kickback for disabled children or special needs children and all this stuff. So the school gets money, they get more teachers. The whole system is kind of, it's built to feed on itself. But amphetamines aren't good for children, and they're not good for adults either. And neither are these drugs, because that's never what's wrong. The person isn't nuts, they have something wrong. And if you carefully look, if you measure, do you have this? Do you have low minerals? Do you have low hormones? You can find these things, and then instead of just giving Band-Aids in terms of drugs to try to cover up symptoms, you can help people actually recover, because the body basically wants to be healthy. And if you give the right things, get rid of the wrong things and give back the right things, then the body will start to feel better, and it will heal, and it will get better. Okay? There's a question there?
Yeah, I'm wondering, is memory loss one of the symptoms from mercury
Well,
poisoning?
it is. It can be mercury, but it could be pesticides. It could be that you have a deficiency of magnesium. It could be that you need some thyroid hormone.
How about muscle twitching?
Same. All it means is that that something's wrong. But if you start thinking of this means this, it usually doesn't work out that way. Usually there's this and this and this and this and this, and you get that. So when people come to us, I say, look, this isn't, sort of the way the regular medicine works is, okay, you have high blood pressure and high cholesterol, therefore you need Lipitor and atenolol. What we're saying is, no, you have a symptom, understood. Now, why is your body producing that symptom as a defense? High cholesterol is a defense. Did you know that cholesterol is toxic to mold and fungus? And that sometimes people, when they're in moldy atmospheres like all of us are, and they're being affected by the mold toxin, that cholesterol will bind and neutralize mold toxin?
Wow.
Now, if your cholesterol's high, and you're in an environment, maybe unbeknownst to yourself, where there's mold toxin that's poisoning you, and you go get on Lipitor and you lower your cholesterol, is that a good thing to do for yourself?
Yeah.
No, because now the mold toxin's going to get you. So whenever you're doing it that way, it's the analogy is you're driving down the highway and the brake fluid light goes on in your car. And you say, the brake fluid light went on. I'm going to take a little piece of tape here and I'm going to put it over the brake fluid light. And then pretend that it's not really low brake fluid, that the light just went on for no reason. And if you don't know that the light went on and you can't see it, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing as giving a medication for a symptom if you haven't really tried, unless it's life-threatening. Okay, so life-threatening, okay, sometimes emergencies, you have to do stuff so that the person doesn't die. Okay, so that's fine, but it's not, nobody's thinking, it's like I just looked this up, 24 billion dollars a year is the market for anti-acid drugs. The little purple pill, Nexium, Tagamet, Pepcid, 24 billion a year. Now what does the commercial say? I ate tomato sauce and I got a stomach ache. I better take Nexium, or I'm going to take it before I go to the restaurant to eat the food that's making me sick, so that even though it's still going to make me sick, I won't feel the symptom and I'll be fine.
Bury the cable guy.
Bury the cable guy. Exactly. Okay? Now that's kind of insane. Because when you take these drugs, you don't digest protein, you don't digest minerals, your likelihood of stomach cancer goes up, and it's going to kill you. And these drugs were not designed to be given over long periods of time because they're very dangerous. So they were prescription for a while, so they were somewhat restricted. Now they're not even prescription.
Right.
Now you can
Yeah.
just go to the drugstore and you can buy them. You can take them for as long as you want. And then you can theoretically eat whatever you want. You really can't, because the paymaster gets paid. You know, I don't know if you heard this story. This king once wanted to find the one phrase that captivated all of human intelligence. And he sent out all his emissaries throughout all the world to find, there was going to be this big, huge reward to find the one true, small piece of knowledge which was the most truth that any truth was. And so he sent people out, and the messengers all came back, and he picked the top 100 ones, and he said, okay, send them out again and find some more. And they sent them out, and they came back, and this happened for a while. And they came back, and finally they narrowed it down to 2, and then they narrowed it down to 1. The one, like, piece of truth that would be the most important thing to know. You know what it is?
Keep breathing.
Keep breathing. There's no such thing in life as a free lunch. Okay? Everything has a cost. Okay? Pepsi has a cost. Okay? Bad food has a cost. Okay? Nobody's getting out of here alive, but you're going to pay. When I was in college, this yogi came to the university, and he did classes for a week at night, and I went to the classes, and he had us doing postures during the day, and at night he would give us a lecture. And he was this very elegant Indian man, and you know, everything he did was sort of had an aesthetic of kind of rhythm and beauty. And he would sit on the floor and he would lecture us, and he said, here's another truth for you. And he was talking about simple eating. He said, you know, the first 20 years of your life, you can do anything you want. The next 20 years, you're kind of on the momentum of grace. And the next 20 years, your body will take you to hell.
That's the truth.
And it's the truth.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of 40-year-olds who think that they're old.
Yes.
And there's a lot of 10-year-olds now who have diabetes and high cholesterol and high blood pressure.
Scary, isn't it?
Okay? And cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Childhood cancer rates are just soaring. So there's no free lunch. And if you pay mind to these things, you can, you know, you can live and enjoy and not get sick, because either you're going to trade good food and nutritional supplements, or you're going to be taking drugs. It really comes down to one or the other, because the way the environment is, that's just how it is. So I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I see.
You just gotta say about how you treat cancer.
All cancers are different the way you would treat them, right?
Right.
Well-
We're gonna talk about how.
Sure, let's do cancer. Cancer is, here's a healthy cell, here's a cancer cell. Probably the thing that triggers the cancer to start is that this cell gets very toxic, and the DNA inside the cell, the nucleus inside the cell. Now, you know, the Human Genome Project was finished a few years ago, where they were able to map all the genes. And what they found out was only about 10% of the genes are active. And what they called the rest of the stuff in there was junk DNA. It's not really junk DNA, it's just DNA that could be turned on or turned off, depending on the environment. And you
Or lifestyle.
there's this term called epigenetics. Epi means on top of, so it's on top of the genes. And what we know now is that the environmental stimulus causes the body to turn some genes on and some genes off. And based on your genetics, they get turned on or off easier or better. Like we know people who are, about 25% of us, have a problem in a thing called methylation. And methylation is how the genes get turned off. A methyl, which is, it's a very simple structure. It's a carbon and 3 oxygens. But when the body wants to turn off a gene, it puts a methyl group on that and it turns it off. Well, it turns out about 25% of us don't handle this methylation very well. It's genetic, we don't handle it well. We need lots of extra B vitamins. Folic acid, B12, B5, B6. We need lots of extra because we
And
just...
that increases the methyl,
It increases, it allows us to methylate when we aren't methylating right at this
Okay.
point.
What's a lot of D vitamin, how much is that?
The D is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Another one, D influences 3,000 genes. Has a huge global effect on many things. Blood pressure, immune system, heart health, lots of things. But if we just look at this methylation, so if you don't turn them off, then sometimes the bad ones get turned on. And you know, so your mom had pesticides, and that transfers to you, and so you have this gene turned on, which may end up causing this cell to not be able to use oxygen. So we call that anaerobic. An means not. Aerobic means oxygen. So it means that this cell can't use oxygen to make energy. So the way we make energy is we take oxygen plus glucose, it goes into this cell, and he spits out 38 units of energy. That energy is called ATP. Okay? And that energy, that cell can use it to do his job. If he's a hair cell, then he uses that energy to grow hair. If it's a liver cell, he uses it to detoxify. Okay? If it's a kidney cell, he uses it to make urine go out. Now, when this cell's energy system gets turned off, such that he can't use oxygen, or he wasn't getting enough oxygen and he had to adapt so that he could make energy not using oxygen, he can only make 2 ATPs. Now that's a big difference, 38 versus 2. So in order for him to adapt, he's got to have a lot more sugar if he's going to make 38, because he's got to do it really a lot, or he doesn't have any energy. So on the cell, there are things called insulin receptors. So you eat a meal, you eat a carbohydrate, it's digested, it goes into your blood, and it can't get out of your blood into your cell unless that cell, and then when you eat a carbohydrate meal, your pancreas makes insulin, and it releases the insulin, it's a hormone, into your blood. And insulin goes to this little place on this cell, and it's like a key, and it opens the door, and the sugar goes in. And your average cell has, let's say, 3 insulin receptors. Well, this guy needs a lot of sugar. How's he going to get more sugar? What would you do?
Big.
Yeah,
More sugar.
more insulin receptors. Okay? So we know that a cancer cell has about 10 times the number of insulin receptors that a healthy cell. So if he's got 3, he's got 30. So when that insulin comes, now he's got 30 doors where the glucose can go in. Because he's got to get more. Why do people with cancer, the tumor grow and the cells shrink? Because these guys are getting all the nutrition. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have to detoxify these cells. And here's the other thing, is when this cell, working this way, gets a little bit toxic and goes bad, a gene gets turned on in that cell that says, you've lived a good life, die. And that cell dies. It self-destructs. When the cell is using no oxygen, a gene gets turned, that gene that says self-destruct gets turned off. So he won't self-destruct. He'll actually make more like him. And he won't just die, like a good cell would, a healthy cell. Okay? So they don't die, they don't use oxygen, they need lots of sugar. And they have lots of insulin receptors. And they even make growth hormone, and they put it out, and they stimulate themselves to even grow more.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
How does the lymphatic system and the dry and the wet state of the cell affect all of that?
Well, what happens is that these cells then, a healthy cell has a certain amount of sort of stickiness so that it stays where it is. You know, it stays you know, if it's a liver cell, it stays where it is. And part of this whole process too is this cell then gets loose. And it will go into lymphatics. Sometimes they're killed in lymphatics, sometimes they're not. And they will wander into the bloodstream, and they will float around, and they will end up someplace else. That's how the metastases occur. The real tough ones get away, and they go other places.
So, but I mean, if you start a pattern of lymphatic drainage,
Well,
and keep
there's
it up.
two. Sometimes lymphatic drainage is helpful. Sometimes it's worse because you spread them around more. So there's some controversy over is drainage good when you have active cancer? In the pre-cancer stage, to move stuff out, it's a good thing. In a cancer stage, it's not clear. If you actually spread it around, just like a biopsy, you punch a hole in this thing and then you open up a big hole, and then we know that women who get biopsied with breast cancer have a higher incidence of spread of breast cancer than people who don't. You know, if you go in there and you take out the whole thing at one time versus punch the thing, get the diagnosis, wait, weeks or months, the chances that you're going to spread it are higher.
so how does that work with the dry and the wet state of the cell?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by dry and wet stage.
Well, when the little energy thing is moving with the potassium and what is it, magnesium?
Sodium.
Sodium. When it's working, it's a dry state in the cell and disease can't exist. But when it's wet, it can.
Well, if the energy system in the cell is poisoned, because that pump, that sodium-potassium pump, is dependent on making ATP.
Right?
If there's no ATP, then the pump gets slowed down, doesn't work. So if the pump is slowed and the cell is toxic, then the cell may, what you call wet may be that the cell it sort of pools, stuff pools in there. And it's dependent on energy, on the cell's energy. We have a treatment that we give to cancer patients, which is, if you measure in a cancer cell, see, if you measure on this membrane holds a charge. It holds an electronic charge so that the cell can push and pull things across. And that charge is about 70 millivolts. A cancer cell has a charge of about 15 to 30 millivolts. It's an energy depleted cell. We have a treatment that we give cancer patients, which is, it's called pulsed magnetic field. It's a device where we actually pulse a magnetic field at the cell. And this membrane gets recharged. It charges back up to 70. And then the wet state of the cell, the cell is then able to energize for between 4 hours and a couple of days, depending on the cell, so that it can start to pump out this stuff. Did that answer?
Yeah, somewhat. Are you familiar with Carl West? The International Academy of Lymphology?
Not sure. Do you have an answer?
Yeah. In the wet and dry state, he's referring to a group of cells. C. Samuel West was a chiropractor in Montana, or up in that neighborhood, and he was Norman Walker's partner, or somewhat, and chiropractor. And he developed a theory of the ATP getting overwhelmed with extra sodium in the cell systems. When extra sodium goes in, the wet state becomes wet and disease state. And that is that this group of cells And it can be eye cells or brain cells or toe cells. When those cells are not touching, not communicating with one another, blocked by the sodium and excess water in the cell systems, there's no communication, no electrical energy. The lymph system is inefficient in drawing dead and dying cells or sick cells out of the system. When the cells are butted up against one another, that's a healthy state according to West. And West showed a number, 7 different therapeutics that you can do to alleviate what he called trapped plasma protein. The sodium and protein in the cell systems make it inefficient for electrical charge to occur within the cells. When the cells are close together and communicating, that's a healthy cell system.
And that's wet versus dry.
That, I think, is what he was referring to.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah, basically when the cell is wet, it's shorted out electrically. And it's believed that actual internal spontaneous combustion is the severe state of that.
Again, this is a cell system, not specifically a single cell, but a
Right.
cell system.
Right.
Okay. You know, I think probably these cells, once they're energetic, their ability to produce energy, you know, the cell gets toxic, it can't produce energy, that it may accumulate sodium, which may then downstream lead to these other things. Sure.
When somebody comes in to your office, what kind of testing do you do to find out, you know, the person has some problems?
Really, there's kind of 2 categories. One is their body has things in it that shouldn't be there. So environmental toxins or internally produced toxins. And those we got to get it out. The other thing is they have things missing that they should have. You know, they don't have enough vitamin D. They don't have enough of magnesium or selenium or CoQ10 or probiotics.
So is that blood work you do first?
Well, it's everything. It's saliva, and it's blood work, and it's stool, and it's urine. We sample all the body tissues because some things show up better in one place than they do in the other.
Do you do live blood cell?
I do live blood cell.
Because I just heard from Brian that they're not doing it anymore because of some law change.
Well, the FDA comes in and confiscates people's microscopes if they know you're doing it.
Really? Why?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they've been
Because-
doing it for like 20 years.
Well, more than 20 years. I was an infectious disease fellow, and we would look at dark field every day in the lab at University Hospital in California, because you can see little, called spirochetes, little teeny organisms, Lyme organisms, on a dark field, and you can't see it on a regular microscope. But what happened is that there were a lot of people, I think this is what happened, is that you could do a weekend course and become certified as a dark field microscopist without any real medical training, and then go out and make diagnoses on people and prescribe things for them with no license. And, you know, sometimes people did good and sometimes they didn't do good, and I think it then got to regulating agencies and said, well, we got a lot of people out here who, you know, clean carpets in the day, and at night they're diagnosing cancer and treating people, and they just don't know what the heck they're doing. So there was a huge overreaction to it. I think it is a good technology, and in someone's hands who's trained and who understands it, it can be very valuable. As is the rest of the stuff, you know, because, you know, I think my experience is that you can't treat a person using just a dark field microscope. And you also can't treat someone just doing core lab work. You know, you have to be able to get a broad enough view of what is happening in this organism so that you can see what are they full of that they shouldn't have, and what do they need. Because, you know, you're not going to find a low vitamin D or B12 level on a dark field microscope. But if you do a blood test, you can. And we do some energetic testing. We have a computer that'll scan your body for 14,000 environmental toxins. It's really valuable. And you can make a homeopathic specific to that person that will then begin a detoxification process in that person. So my experience has been that you just have to keep it very broad, and you have to look at a lot of things if you're going to find the right thing. I saw a gal today. This is the first recheck for her. She's at McDill. She's a colonel in the Army, and she had breast cancer 7 years ago and survived it, and came in because she was just a little bit concerned in her health because she was very fatigued. And she'd been to the doctors at McDill. She'd been to some other doctors at, private doctors. And so I did a very broad shoot on her. I found that she has low magnesium in her in her cells, and she has low selenium. She has 4 parasites growing inside of her. She's got a pork tapeworm and another one, an ascaris, another roundworm, and an amoeba. These came up on the stool test.
Wow.
And it still shows that she has a lot of cells in her body that are working anaerobically. She clinically does not have cancer, but her terrain, her sort of body terrain, is not very good. And she had high lead in her blood. So, and so these things are very helpful, because I can say to her, look, we can, this stuff, we can repair this stuff. And I'll bet you anything, once we clean you up, your cells that are sort of borderline, that are kind of like, they're not cancerous, but they're starting to go this way, will come back. And your body will heal. So that's kind of how we do it. Yeah.
Have you heard the claim that cancer can't grow in an alkaline body?
Well, it has a harder time. We try to alkalinize people. I want their morning saliva pH to be 7 or better.
What do you do to get it there?
Well, I put them on a diet which will help to alkalinize them, and I have them take baking soda or another thing to get them alkaline.
How much baking soda?
Whatever it takes to get their pH up.
We had a guy here last month, he takes a tablespoon and a gallon of water every day.
Yeah, some people need more than a tablespoon.
Really?
Yeah.
Is there a
Depending again what they eat.
But a lot of people, a lot of doctors are saying that, it can be dangerous taking too much. I don't know about that.
I haven't seen any problems with it. I think if you get people in pain and you get them alkalinized, their pain gets much better, especially if they have cancer pain. Their pain goes way down.
Have you heard of vitamin B something or other, Laetrile or
17.
apricot kernel? That's it, B17.
Yeah. So Laetrile is a substance that comes from the pits of apricots or peaches,
Right.
and Laetrile blocks this process, and it only works in cells that already are like that.
Fascinating.
The problem with Laetrile is that it's bound to a cyanide ion, and cyanide is poisonous. So some people have been poisoned because they ate too many apricot pits. Now, in Florida, there's only one drug that's outlawed under any circumstances. And guess what that drug is?
Laetrile.
Wow.
I had somebody here from Australia who's here to get our cancer treatment, and she was on Laetrile there, and she actually got special permission from her government to import it so that she could take it. But in the Florida statutes, it's written that Laetrile can't be given by, you can get it yourself, you can buy it over the internet. You got to be careful with it though, because you can poison yourself. So I called our attorney to see if I could do it, since she had a letter from the Australian government saying it was okay, and he said no, they'll come get you, so you can't.
So, I read a book just recently, and that's how I came to be here tonight, actually. I read a book on cancer treatment, and the guy recommended raw vegan lifestyle, whatever. But the point was, he was talking about the cyanide in the Laetrile is actually only bioavailable when it comes in contact with a cell that is bad.
Yeah.
And so the cyanide doesn't affect the healthy cells, and it doesn't become bioavailable unless it hits a cancer cell. And then it only affects the cancer cell. Once the cyanide is released from the Laetrile, it takes it, the cancerous cell takes it in and commits suicide, basically?
It does, but then you have a free cyanide molecule.
No, because what it does is it produces two other components. It doesn't, the cyanide disappears and it produces two other things, and one's a pain reliever and one is just a nothing chemical that gets.
But when we
disposed
measure
of.
cyanide blood levels, when people get it, because we used to do it before it was outlawed, and the cyanide levels can go too high and you have to watch it.
Okay, interesting.
It isn't quite the panacea. There is some activity, some anti-cancer activity. It's light. It's not bad, but it's not. It's, you know, if some of these things, you know, like this cured me and therefore it works on everybody.
Right, no, I obviously there, you have to.
It's, you know, it's usually it's not that simple. Yeah.
Doctor, you mentioned about vitamin D earlier.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, being married to Doreen, she said there's some funky mushroom and then getting vitamin D from the sun. But she also said that you think that, or prescribe that most of us need to take a vitamin D supplement. And if we live here in Florida, we're out in the sun the whole time, why are we vitamin D deficient?
I don't know why we are, but we've measured thousands. Every person that comes in that I see, I get a vitamin D blood level on. Virtually, every person. And whether you're suntan or not, very few people, if they're not supplementing with vitamin D, have a very low level of vitamin D. I don't know why, I don't know what's wrong with it, but that's just what we see. We know for a level of less than 30 on LabCorp's test is too low. 100 is the top. If you look at large populations across the planet, at people who have vitamin D levels in the 70 to 90 range from sunshine or from lots of oily fish, I'm not sure about the mushroom. I haven't heard about the mushroom, but oily fish.
I could be mistaken on that.
No, they got I
Science,
don't know why.
the science just came out that if you put mushrooms in the sun, the vitamin D in them exponentially increases.
I haven't seen it, but assuming that's true. You want your level, that population where the level of vitamin D was between 70 and 90, and then they looked against incidence of cancer. So prostate, breast, colon cancer. That people who had vitamin D levels in this range had 46% less incidence of those cancers than people who didn't.
Was there a particular area in the world?
Well, I mean, they're probably in areas where they're getting year-round sunshine, or for some reason they're supplementing.
And the supplements, what supplement do you recommend?
Well, it's D3. It's the activated vitamin D. I find most people need about 5,000 units a day. Take it with food. I'm in the sun a fair amount because I'm exercising and riding my bike, and I don't like sunscreen. And my vitamin D used to be about 65, like 7, 8 years ago. Now, if I don't supplement, it's 42. If I take 5,000, it's about 52. I take 10,000 every day, and it puts me about 74.
Doc, is there a particular brand or natural versus synthetic, or does it make a difference?
You know, in the grocery stores, half the stuff, if you test it, isn't any good. So, you know, if you go to Costco and buy their cheapest one, you know, it may or may not be good. Some of these things, they've been analyzed and they prove that, you know, this is a good brand. In the office, what we have are professional brands, and they're more likely to be good because they test the stuff and the government sort of holds them accountable. So, whether, you know, so...
If it's synthetic, it rotates the wrong way, right?
Well, no, it's probably 50-50, and, but if you get a good serum level, it'll be active. You know, if you can get it from sunshine, get it. But if you don't check the blood level, you won't, you know, where are you going to
Cod liver oil gives you D, right?
Cod liver oil can give you D.
Because that cures rickets, and that's a D deficiency.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yum.
Yeah, it's for oily fish.
You get capsules.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about SEAC again. What is exactly you thought of it, if anything?
There's a lady, SEAC is, I think, Claire backwards,
It's,
or
Casey.
Case
Nurse Casey.
backwards. It was a lady, Canadian lady, I think, who put together 6 or 7 different kinds of tea roots.
Four
Four.
different tree roots. The most important one is like a sheep
Sheep sorrel.
sorrel. I can't pronounce the last part of it. And she treated lots, hundreds, maybe thousands of people, had hundreds of doctors sign off saying it was a good cancer treatment. Almost got approved by the Canadian government, but didn't. And I know 2 people who have been cured of tumors from it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's harmful.
Yeah.
It's all
What is
in the, does it work or?
SEAC. It's a herbal tea. ESSAFIAC. SEAC.
you can get it in any health food store.
It's one of those things, I think, like Dr. Minkoff was saying, it's like there's not a panacea where one thing works for everybody.
Right.
Yeah. I just know 2 people. who
My sort of, the guy I learned the cancer treatment for is a very religious Greek Orthodox man. He's Greek, and his religion is Greek Orthodox. And he said he used to go to school, and when he was at seminary, the guy who was training him said, look, my proof is not Saint Francis, who was the,
German.
no, the saint, the educator guys.
Augustine.
Saint who?
Ignatius.
Augustine.
The Jesuits. Who was like the lead Jesuit guy?
Saint Ignatius.
St. Ignatius? Okay. So he says, I go by St. Ignatius' proof, which is until I see the blood on the hands from the spike, I don't believe it, and I want to see it 25 times. So if there's a cancer treatment, and you can say to somebody, okay, show me 25 cases where you gave SEAC tea, you know, and they were worked up well, you know.
Double-blind study.
Huh?
Double-blind study.
It doesn't even have to be double blind. It's just like, okay, look, here's the MRI, here's the biopsy, here's the tissue, here's what they got. They took SEAC tea and they did raw vegan, and they got better. Here's 25, here's 25, where it's like this really goes. It's very hard to do that. It's very hard to find those proofs for folk remedies or diet remedies. Doesn't mean they're not true. But it's very hard to, it puts a burden of proof there that is rarely true. Because if you go on the internet for cancer cures, you will find a gazillion things that cured my cancer. Yeah.
The individual that you had come in with MS, they used to believe that once the myelin sheath is destroyed, it does not grow back. But now they're starting to say they can bring it back. What are you doing for the neuropathy, for the myelin sheath regrowth?
Well, it's felt to be an autoimmune injury. You know, the body's immune system is actually attacking the myelin sheath and denaturing it. So most of the autoimmune injury has to do with a leaky gut and a heavy metal. Mercury is a very strong inducer of autoimmune disease. You'll get a mercury sitting on a nerve cell, and it makes that nerve cell look like it's foreign, and then the immune system will attack it. So if we can clean him out and fix up his gut, and then give him the necessary phospholipids, because they need high doses of phospholipids so that they'll regrow the membrane. They do, and they do heal, and you'll see their MRIs get better, and you'll see the patients get better.
What are the phospholipids that you do?
Well, it's mixtures of phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylethanolamin. These are the lipids that are actually in that membrane, in all cell membranes. And now there's companies that make the mixtures, the sort of physiologic mixtures, where you can give it to people, and they will rebuild their fat and rebuild their membranes.
Have a front.
Well, wait one second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, continuing on MS, is there a point in the MS progression where there's point of no return?
Sure. Sure. If you have so much damage, and you have a host that's so overwhelmed, it's not that you can, raise the dead or cure cure everybody.
But you could see somebody to make that determination.
Well, we see them, and if they're willing to go for it, we go for it. We had a guy last year. He was a chiropractor who had a man cave. He's from Tennessee. He had a man cave in his office, and in the man cave he had a hot tub, and in the hot tub he had way too much chlorine, and he got poisoned with chlorine to the point where he had a diagnosis of ALS. He was mostly paralyzed. He couldn't really move. He was in a wheelchair. And he came down to see us, and when his wife and his son put him on the table, I looked, and it didn't look like he was breathing. The muscles of his chest were so weak. And we sent him to the hospital, and he was in ICU for 2 weeks with a tube in his throat, breathing. He recovered enough to get out of the hospital because he hated doctors, didn't want to be in the hospital. And he came back to us, and we detoxified the chlorine, and then he had a bunch of other stuff going on. And he went home, and by the time he went home, it took about 8 weeks, he was standing up, and he was moving his legs, and he was way better. So there's no sort of, my go button is the patient's interested. If the patient says, I've had enough, okay. So, where there's a will, sometimes with the right technology, people can come back.
And what's the wait list to see you if I could bring this person in?
What's the what?
Wait list to see you if I could bring this person in to see you.
Usually within a week or 10 days. Yeah.
And they're saying now mercury, probably from your fillings, also is perhaps causing Alzheimer's, more so than what they used to think is aluminum. I guess in Petri dishes they're testing, I'm not a scientist, of course. But how do you get the mercury out, like for Alzheimer's or for any heavy metal? Is that just EDTA or?
Well, there's a number of things that will chelate mercury, that they'll bind mercury and pull it out. If it's in the teeth, you got to get the teeth cleaned out first. And then we use IV things. Glutathione is a good mercury chelator. EDTA is a chelator. DMPS is a chelator. I developed a product for my wife, which we've used for 14 years, which is an oral spray, which is a very good chelator. It's called Metal Free. And you can spray it sublingually. We've given it to newborn babies that were mercury toxic from their mothers, and they can take it. I've even had children who drunk a whole bottle of it and they didn't die or they didn't get sick. So it's very safe, and it's a very good chelator.
How about cilantro?
Cilantro it helps move mercury out of cells. It's a helpful thing.
Can you think you can cure yourself taking 2, 3, 4 bunches of cilantro a week for a year or something, or just a guess?
The self-cure thing, the problem with it is you got to make sure that your colon, kidneys can handle the load, and that like this guy with MS, he has a bowel movement every 3 days. You'll never get well with a bowel movement every 3 days.
Right.
After about 18 to 24 hours, that membrane, the stuff's going the other way. It's coming back in. So that's no good. So, and then you got to make sure that the guy that the hormone levels are reasonable. If you got someone with a testosterone and estrogen and progesterone level in the toilet, and you try to detoxify them, it's tough go. If you get someone who's selenium or magnesium or potassium deficient, the body won't let go of the mercury. That mercury is sitting in a spot where the body needs a plus charge. It should have a magnesium sitting there or a selenium sitting there, but the body is very deficient in that. The body's not going to let go of it. You can add the chelators, it just doesn't come out.
What's good for potassium? Almost all vegetables, or?
Well, the vegetables are good, tomatoes are good, bananas are good.
And Brazil nuts are about the highest for
selenium?
Selenium?
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to supplement it too. Yeah.
I have a friend that has bone marrow cancer. Have you had any success in treating bone marrow cancer?
Super rare. We do the same thing no matter what kind of cancer you got. We have to clean them up. And then the other thing that we do with people is that to take advantage of this thing that the cell has a lot of insulin receptors. Now here's a paradox, which I don't have my hands completely around, but I'll give you the paradox, okay? So raw vegan diet is alkalinizing, right? Okay? We want an alkaline milieu for the body, okay? But a lot of people on that diet get way too many carbohydrates. And this thing wants carbohydrates, this thing wants sugar. Okay? Now, the sort of latest, not in the real traditional cancer literature, but in the experimental cancer literature, is that if you can starve this guy of sugar, he will die. And so people are going to ketogenic diets, like almost no carbohydrates, like 3% of calories, a lot of fat, some protein, real low sugar. And that if you get real low sugar, these guys don't adapt, they need sugar. I had ketones up here before. Maybe I didn't. So the body can learn to operate on what are called ketones. That's when fat gets metabolized, the ketones come out. Now that person's going to have an acid milieu when you do that. They are going to have an acid milieu. So there's something wrong with this. You know, there's something we don't understand. But we are going to lower and lower carbohydrate diets on people. Minimal fruit, no starchy vegetables, no grains. To try to get them, because we want them to have really low blood sugars. And you know, I was telling Doreen, I did a consult on she's a 23-year-old college student, raw vegan. And you know, her blood sugar's high, her hemoglobin A1C is high, her triglycerides are high. She's way too much grain, you know, way too much carbohydrates in her diet. And she's not sick, but she doesn't feel well. She's tired, and she just doesn't feel well, and she's got a lot of body aches. And I went through this with her dad, because he'd been a raw vegan for a long time. And his protein levels in his body were very low, and his hormones were very low. And his sugar, and he was, you know, he had a nice paunch. His sugar levels were high, his visceral fat was high, his triglycerides were high. And, you know, he thought he could eat all the fruit he wanted, and he can't. And so I got him, he's still vegan, but I got him on a protein supplement that is vegan, but it's actually usable by him. And I got him off all the carbohydrates, and so he lost about 15 pounds, and he feels a lot better. And then he referred me his daughter, because she was the same way he is. So you got to watch it. It isn't, you know, it's not just, those are other factors which sort of play into this that are important. The puzzle's not figured out, but I think those things are, low sugar is, for health purposes, is pretty important no matter where you look.
And the body recognizes all sugar as sugar.
If
Doesn't
you
matter
eat
whether
a
it's
potato,
plant
or if you eat a squash, or if you eat whole wheat bread, it ends up glucose in the blood.
Yep.
All those starches are just sugar, you know, added to sugar, added to sugar, added to sugar.
Let me ask, I have heard that a lot of people say one way and then some say no, but for acid food, you can take whatever you cook is going to be acid. It's just acid. It's no longer alkaline. It is acid. Is that,
you know,
clear?
It's not clear.
Okay.
My diet is, I'm not a raw vegan. I eat probably 95% paleo. Okay? I was a vegetarian and I had trouble. I was protein malnourished. All the vegetarian vegans I've seen, if they're doing it for 3 years or more, they're all protein malnourished, every one of them. If I measure their blood amino acids, they're low. And their hormones are low. And most of them don't feel that great because they're just not getting enough quality protein to keep their body nourished the way they should. So I was a vegetarian from age 14. At age 14, I was a Boy Scout, and I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, and we went to Oscar Mayer meatpacking plant on a tour.
And that cured you.
That cured me. Okay? So I was a vegetarian until I was 55, I think. Okay?
Wow.
And I was an athlete. I was training, 15 to 20 hours a week, Ironman type training, you know, so hundreds of miles a week on a bike and running and swimming and all this stuff. And I tore a hamstring, and I could not get it to heal for 2 years. I just could not get it to heal. And I did everything. A friend of mine who was over in Europe, and he had some pills which were amino acids, and he gave me the pills, and they were a very special blend of amino acids. The product's called MAP. I ended up importing it into this country.
MAP?
MAP, Master Amino Acid Pattern. It's vegan, it's kosher, not animal derived. And so I started taking 10 of those twice a day, and in 3 weeks my hamstring healed.
Wow.
And then I use a heart rate monitor to exercise, and I knew that my maximum heart rate was 172. And after I'd taken this product for about 6 weeks, my maximum heart rate jumped up to 184, which is a huge change, huge increase.
What is that product doing for you, cellular level?
Here's the thing. The proteins in your body are the structure of your body. So it's the tissues, it's the bone, it's the liver, it's the hair, it's the skin, and it's the enzymes. Okay? It's the enzymes to detoxify. It's the enzymes to digest food. It's the enzymes that work in your immune system. It's the enzymes to do this process of translating oxygen and glucose into energy. There is a turnover of protein, like in your mouth, in your digestive tract. Those cells ought to be turning over about every 3 or 4 days. Okay? They get worn, they get rough edges, they die, new one has to be put there. So you burn your tongue, usually if you're in good shape, within 12 to 16 hours, it's replaced. Okay? You still don't have a raw tongue. Okay? Now, if you're an active person, or you have a lot of stress, mental or physical, then the proteins turn over more. So if I rode my bike this morning for 2 hours, okay? Well, there needs a lot of protein to heal up the muscles and here and tendons and all that stuff. So if your body is below the level of protein to do the repair, then what the body does is it makes a wish list, a priority list. So it says, I'm going to make neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine. I'm going to fix the heart, but I'm not going to fix the inner lining of the stomach because that can wait. So here's a true story for me too. Before I injured my hamstring, a little bit before, a lady whose name some of you may know, her name is Pamela McDougall. There was this guy who had pancreatic cancer named William Donald Kelly. He was a dentist, and he cured himself of pancreatic cancer using coffee enemas and real high doses of digestive enzymes. Okay? And once he cured himself of cancer, he started to help people by a telephone. They would call him, they would send him his reports, he would give them a program of do these coffee enemas and get in the sauna and take these digestive enzymes and these nutritional supplements. And he has 10,000 documented cases of cancers that either went into remission or cured from this program. It's called the Kelly Enzyme Program. 2 years before he died, this lady named Pamela McDougall worked with him so that she could get the hat from him and that she could work with people. Now, she had come to me earlier because she had some medical problems, and I became her doctor. She lives in Idaho. She became my doctor, and we got to be close friends. And she gave me Kelly's book one of the times when she came. And in the Kelly's book it said, if you want to see if you've got cancer brewing or not in your body, then you take 12 of these enzymes 4 times in a day, and you see if you get any symptoms. If you start getting sick or you have a problem or something happens, then probably you've got brewing cancer, and then you do this program so that you can get rid of it before it's actually bad. So I said, okay, let's try it. So I come in, you're supposed to take the first ones on an empty stomach. I take 12 of those enzymes. 45 minutes later, I have the most roaring, worst gastritis that I've ever had. I couldn't eat any solid food for days. It burned the inside of my stomach about to nothing. So I said, Pamela, I don't think I've got cancer, but I sure can't take these enzymes. It always bothered me, but I never knew what was wrong. So fast forward, it was probably 6 or 9 months. I take this MAP. I'm taking 10 twice a day. My hamstring heals. And it dawns on me, gee, I was a vegetarian all these years. Maybe for me, my protein deficiency wasn't healing my muscles, and maybe it wasn't preparing the correct mucus layer on my stomach to protect me from these very strong digestive enzymes. And I called Pam and I said, send me another batch of enzymes, I'm going to try it again. And I took 12 of the enzymes, nothing. Took them for 5 days. 12
After
of
the
them-
map.
After the map. I stayed on the map. I've been on the map ever since. Stayed on it, and my stomach was fine. So in one person it's one thing, in another person it's another thing, in another person it's another thing. You just don't know where's your body gonna not do it. Where is the turnover gonna get stopped? Maybe you don't make any pancreatic enzymes and you eat your food and you don't digest it. Or maybe you're not making enough hydrochloric acid. This colonel has 4 parasites in her colon. I'm sure she has no hydrochloric acid in her stomach, because if she did, it would have killed him on the way in. So you gotta pay attention to this, because it's such a big factor. And I have not seen, I have a lot of patients, there's a whole community in Clearwater of raw vegans I haven't seen, and vegetarians. And I've seen a lot of them, because a lot of them don't feel very good. And when I measure them, like serum amino acids, many of them are very low. And when they replace the protein, they can then use it. It doesn't mean they have to be animal lovers or animal eater lovers, but they've got to make sure that they're getting enough essential amino acids, and their body's able to utilize B12 from whatever source they think they're getting it from. And some people will convert vegetable omega-3s to DHA, but a lot of people don't. Especially if they're carb overloaded, that there's an enzyme that doesn't work, it doesn't convert. So I think unless you measure it, you don't really know. So that's my sort of caution, because as soon as you put in those things, the body responds very nicely. And the people come back and say, oh my God, so much better.
Hey, Doc.
Yeah.
When you get a chance, when you're winding up, could you cover just a little bit with your IPT? And please share what happened with our son.
Okay. So first on the son, he got a diagnosis of mono from the regular doctor. It was told there was really nothing you could do, and that the normal course is, I don't know, 3 to 6 weeks. He'd have a fever and he'd feel bad and he'd be laid up and he wouldn't be in school, and it'd be a just plan on it. So Doreen brought him in, and we gave him IV vitamin C and hydrogen peroxide, and in 4 days he was completely fine. And he went back to school, and I haven't seen him, he's been fine. So there are natural ways to not only stimulate the immune system, but to kill virus, to end viruses, and get people better really pretty fast. So that's that. So if you're
Just one dose of it, or do you?
I think you got 3.
3?
Yeah, he got 3 doses of it. But let me just say something back to the map. When I went to see Dr. Minkoff, and we did my levels, my protein levels were as well low. So we had this debate about the raw vegan thing, because he likes everyone to do paleo. So I'm like, I'm not doing paleo. I'm going to stay raw. But I started taking his MAP program, and I can tell a difference. I've only been on it maybe 4 weeks so far. 4 weeks. I take 5 2 times a day. But I do feel better. And just wanted to ask you this about the MAP. I know that you say to take it on an empty stomach, or don't take it with another protein, right?
or a fat.
Or a fat. Okay, because I seem like I do better if I have a little something in my stomach in the morning.
Fruit's fine, vegetables are fine.
Okay, that's what I've been taking with the green drink.
See, this MAP is pre-digested. It's amino acids, and there's a very special ratio. And the ratio, you can buy amino acids everywhere, but if you take those amino acids, the ratio isn't quite right for the body, and so most of them get wasted. They can't get built into protein. So the guy who figured this out wasn't me, it was another guy, that if they're in this specific ratio, then 99% of them will be absorbed into your body and made into body protein. So the biggest customers for this are athletes because they get fast recovery. The other big customer is patients with cancer who are wasted. And what we found is that if they've been through regular treatments and they've been beat up, that if you give them 30 MAP a day, within about 3 months, they will gain back 14 to 16 pounds of lean body mass. Their serum proteins will come back up to normal, and their immune system will actually get going again. So it can be a very helpful product, and I don't think it violates anything other than it's somewhat plant derived, but it's vegan. So say something else. Oh, IPT. Just one more thing on the cancer. Part of the problem with cancer is that if the burden of tumor cells is too big, then the immune system doesn't have a chance. A grape-sized tumor has about 10 to the 12th cells.
Wow.
Okay, it is a huge number. If you have a chemotherapy agent, which is 99% kill, so if you take 10 to the 12th cells, trillion cells, and you kill 99% of them,
Still got a trillion.
how many are left? 100 billion. Now the immune system can't stand that hit too many times. And so the white blood cell count goes down, the red blood cell count goes down, the bone marrow gets trashed, and the hair falls out, and the whole inner lining of the intestine, which is supposed to be turning over, now gets killed off, and so people get sick. So this strategy has not worked. Another strategy was developed by a Mexican doctor, actually in the 20s, where he saw, okay, these have 10 times the insulin receptors of these. What if we did this? What if we gave somebody insulin, fasted them, have them come in with a blood sugar of 80 or 90, give them a dose of insulin, lower the sugar, open up all the insulin doors. Now this guy's got 30 doors and this guy's got 3 doors. And then give them just a little bit of the chemotherapy, like 10%. Now a healthy cell can handle 10%. The hair doesn't fall out, the bone marrow doesn't get trashed, the gut doesn't get bad. It can handle it. Not ideal, but it can handle it. So give 10%, and then as soon as it's in the bloodstream, give them some sugar. Inject some sugar. And these cells suck up 10 times more. These cells take up 10%. And you get a big kill here, and you get a little wobble here, but he doesn't fall down. So that's part of the things that we're doing in the clinic, is to do this. It's called IPT, insulin potentiated therapy.
Makes sense.
And it can be used for infection, it can be used for this, and it's very effective. Most of the people that we see are people who have stage 4 disease, and they've basically been sent home to die. And they really do respond.
That'd be like a Trojan horse then, with taking in the sugar and whacking them with the chemo.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay, when you talk about cancer and the alkaline in the body and all that kind of stuff, Hippocrates has been doing that for 36 years, right?
Yeah.
And they're more successful than anybody that I know.
You know, I haven't seen, see, they don't publish statistics. They don't let, if they do, I haven't seen it. Okay, let me see your last 100 cancer patients.
Yeah.
1 year, 2 year, 3 years, 5 years. Nobody's talking. They're not showing anybody their data that I know of. And if I'm wrong, correct me. But you know, where you open the doors to see, at least in the sort of regular stuff, there is some scrutiny with a lot of BS, but there is some scrutiny. The problem with this area of non-standard is that the scrutiny isn't, you know, very few people. Brzezinski has his doors open, so he will tell you, you know, you've got a glioblastoma, I can probably give you a 35 or 40% chance. Or you go to the alternative guy in New York, what's his name? Gonzalez, and you know, he'll give you some, he'll show you his data. So,
Well, I think that's going to change because they're doing a legitimate AMA cancer study.
yeah, so you know, I think I'm into whatever works. And I think most of the guys like me that are doing this are looking for, you know, where are the 25 cases where the nails are in the palms and the blood's on the hands.
Right.
Where you can say, okay, like this is a good, this works. You know, this is something that you can offer someone and say, you know, that you have a good chance of doing this.
Do you have 25 from your clinic? Like, do you have that proof?
But he doesn't have
No.
25 of the exact same cancer, the exact same.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, we
Right,
don't.
that's what you're saying?
So is
And-
there, like, I wonder if there are other doctors who do the same sort of thing that you do and then combined results?
Well, the pattern that we're using, there's an oncologist in Las Vegas, his name's Forsyth, he wrote a book on cancer, who did regular oncology for 30 years and then has transferred to this. And he has a series of 3 or so hundred patients over the last 5 years, where for 3 years his success rate on stage 4 cancer is 63%.
Wow.
Okay, it's very good.
Wow.
Okay, and what we're doing is pretty much patterned after what he's doing. Now,
He's still actively working?
he's still actively working. Yeah.
Now, you didn't talk about food combining.
No.
Is that not an issue?
Um,
Because I mean, especially in the raw food area, you know, there's so many people that make cakes and different things with nuts and fruit, and they load up on that stuff and wonder why they don't feel good.
When I was in college, I was a Shelton devotee. You know, I read all his books. Fasting Can Save Your Life. I did his whole program. I was on his food combining program for a couple of years. Worked fine, I thought. I found if I ever went off, I'd get sick. You know, if I tried to have some fruit for dessert after protein, I'd get gas and a stomach ache, and it was horrendous. And then my wife didn't feel good on it at all, and so we ended up going off of it. And I found that you can do it, and it can be good, but you could also do other things that your body will get used to, and it can be good. Long-term health, you know, I think it's an individual thing. I find that people who you know, if you sort of go through the Cordain paleo rationale, are you guys familiar with this?
No.
I'll just end in this because this is, here's what makes sense to me.
I'm familiar with Primal Blueprint.
What?
Primal Blueprint? Similar to paleo,
Similar.
only allows more fats.
Similar. Okay, here we are, 2013. Okay? When were the first fossils found that are Homo sapiens on planet Earth? Okay? It's about 2.5 million years, give or take, ago. These are fossilized, meet all the criteria for being Homo sapiens. Okay? Now, they were hunter-gatherers. And it was called paleo, this in anthropology, archaeology is called Paleolithic. Paleo in Greek means old, lithic means stone. So they were Stone Agers. Their tools and their weapons were stones. Flints and rocks type of things, and spears and hammers and things like that. And they were hunter-gatherers. They were in clans, you know, 20 to 40, 50 people, and they foraged and found what they could. And so their food was meat, fish, eggs, fruits,
So Doc, would you say that's why we have canine teeth for
nuts.
eating meat?
Oh, sure. Okay? So, nuts, seeds. So that was their food. Now this period, this Paleolithic period, goes to about right here, about 8,000 years ago. These hunter-gatherers became farmers. And it's called the agricultural revolution. It's roughly 8,000, maybe 10,000 years ago. And at that point, what was added was grains, dairy, beans.
Beans?
Beans, legumes. Okay? Now, Human Genome Project, like 2005 or 2007, DNA. Somebody said, well, what was the DNA of these guys? So you can extract the DNA from the fossilized specimens and look at their DNA and say, how close is it? How close is it? Has there been much evolution between then and now of the human genome? And the answer is 99.96%, it's identical. So this is relatively late. You know, there's thousands of generations to hear and only a few hundred to hear. So the rationale is, if you, and this has been my experience in the clinic over the last 5 years. So I don't care what you come in with eating, if you're willing to, as an experiment of one on you, eat this. As organic as you can afford. If it comes in a box or a package, don't eat it. If there's any other ingredient, don't eat it. If it's artificial in any way, don't eat it. Broccoli's broccoli, chicken is chicken, a peach is a peach. Eat this food. And let's see how you do. Probably 99% of people who do it come back and say, my heartburn's gone, I'm not constipated anymore, my stomach feels really good, my energy's better, and I feel better. So my experience is that this in most people is quite successful. Now some people have trouble holding weight, they have to eat more fat. Okay? Some people won't do it because they can't get through the first 10 days and all their cravings turn on, and they don't do it, but most people do it. And most people it's very successful with. So in the ones who don't want to eat meat or fish or eggs, then we have to make substitutions like with MAP and figure out how we're going to get B12 in them if their levels aren't good, and how we're going to handle their oils if they're, because we measure their blood levels of omega-3 oils, of EPA and DHA, and if their levels are low, then the flax isn't making it, and the walnut's not making it. You know, it's not, their body is unable to do it. So we have to figure out some way around that. And so that's kind of, this makes a lot of sense to me, and it doesn't mean that you can't survive any other way, but this seems pretty workable.
Prior to the paleo, how many hundreds of millions of years were we not eating meat, fish, and eggs?
Well, there's no record. I mean, the records don't go back this far. This is just,
We don't have
this
any
is fossils and what they find and what were their weapons and what pictures on the wall were they drawing, and it's,
Right.
you know, it's extrapolated.
So we don't know.
No.
We don't know much.
And now the meat, the fish, the eggs, I mean, they are so contaminated with crap that, are you telling people that you do eat this? Do you minimalize the amount of meat or fish or eggs, or minimalize the fruit or nuts, or is there something that you do less of compared to others?
Well, I try to get people to get, you know,
Because they're stopping at fried chicken, you know, Publix getting the fried chicken.
well,
and
no, it's
chicken.
not, I mean, it's terrible. So, you know, if they can get organic meats and produce, you know, grazed, grass-fed, free-range, fine. Here's the other problem. The vegetables aren't any good either.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
The organic vegetables aren't any good.
Sure.
Why not? Why not?
Why not? You know, we had this
Loaded
mercury
with
vapor
crap.
meter.
Yes,
We had the mercury vapor meter.
Correct.
So we said, okay, let's take some organic eggs. Some hens that walk around and eat earthworms and they're organic eggs. And let's take some broccoli. And let's take some asparagus. Let's take some organic vegetables. And let's just heat them enough in a pot to get a little steam going. And let's stick the mercury vapor in there and see how much mercury is coming off of those vegetables. Especially the crucifers, because there's lots of sulfur and mercury likes sulfur. And the atmosphere is full of mercury. There's a power burning plant on both sides. There's a coal burning plant on both sides of Tampa Bay. You burn coal, you get mercury. Mercury goes up in the air, it rains, it gets into vegetation, it gets into water, it's everywhere. okay?
I thought
Those
they-
vegetables are full of mercury. They're full of mercury. We went through our shelf of all our supplements, and we took caps off and we stuck the mercury vapor in, and we found that a good percentage of the supplements have mercury in them.
Wow,
So there's no getting away from it. You do as well as you can,
Right.
but we're getting poisoned.
So we're breathing that too.
so we
Huh?
gotta,
We're breathing
We're
it.
breathing it, we're eating it, we're pooping it, we're
Okay.
everything.
Does it
Quick.
matter to be cooked or raw?
What? For the mercury content?
No.
No, it
in
doesn't
the
matter.
food. Oh, so if the meat is.
You don't have to eat the meat
cooked-
raw. No, you don't have to eat the
Yeah, I've heard
Some chemtrails.
some failures are raw failures.
I'm sure there's a variation on everything.
Steak tartare.
I think we have one more question.
Okay, one more, last one.
It's gonna be a big one, and just give me a high-level answer on this, and that's about autism and why there's such a spike in autism now. Does it have anything to do with what you've been discussing?
It's exactly what we're discussing. If you take an autistic kid, what you will find is that the brain and the gut of the autistic kid are a mixture of poisoned and deficient. You know, there's a joke, which is a very sad joke, which is if you want to detoxify a woman, it's get her pregnant. Because the mother will dump the toxins into the baby.
Wow.
So the mother isn't taking very good care of herself. She's full of heavy metals and chemicals and pesticides. The baby's born with that load. Then on day one, you give them a hepatitis vaccine, and you give them, crap, and they can't take it. They're overwhelmed. And so you show me any autistic kid, and we've seen. When I was a pediatrician in 1978, we were making rounds at University Hospital, and the chief resident said to us, "When this child has autism, the incidence of autism in 1978 was 1 in about 500,000 births." He said, "You will never see another one. Take a good look at this kid. When we're done with rounds, come in, examine him, play with him, so that you sort of file it in your memory, because you'll probably never see another one, because in your lifetime you'll never see 500,000 children."
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
So I filed that away. And for males now, it's like 1 in 87, 1 in 85 of births these children are being diagnosed with autism. It's not just better refinement of diagnostics. There is a real problem. You got sick mothers who bear sick babies, and then the babies are poisoned.
According to Brian Clement, the CDC says that the previous #1 cause for children under the age of 5, logically, was trauma, accidents. Now the #1 cause of death is brain tumors.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
Number one
the
cause of
epidemic
death.
in children is very strong. So it's the same thing. When we get these kids in, we find the same thing. They're nutritionally deficient and they're poisoned. Here's just the last thing. We have a family that came up from Miami. 12-year-old child with Tourette's. Now Tourette's is a neurological, idiopathic Tourette's. We don't know why he got it. About every 30 seconds, this child did this. Huh! Huh! 24 hours a day.
Even in his sleep.
Even in his sleep. Okay? Now, I was in the room with him for about 2 hours in interviewing him and examining him. And that's very hard to take.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So he's out of school for 2 years. It happened 2 years ago. It happened after he got a flu vaccine.
Wow.
Okay? Prior healthy kid.
A flu vaccine.
Flu vaccine.
Yeah.
Now the neurologist, he saw 3 neurologists in Miami who said, this is idiopathic Tourette's. The only thing we're sure of is it wasn't caused by the flu vaccine. Okay? So we tested him against flu vaccine and found that he had a very strong reaction. And we made a homeopathic remedy of flu vaccine. And at the same time, we did a stool test to see what was growing in his stool, and he had like 5 major bad bacteria in his stool. We did blood levels for heavy metals, and he had arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and lead in high levels in his body. And he was deficient in magnesium and selenium and zinc. Now, I don't know what came first. Either the kid was sort of borderline and toxic and he got a flu vaccine and it plunged him, or the flu vaccine so upset his immune system that his detoxification system just kind of shut off, and his gut shut off, and he got all this stuff. So we worked on his gut, and we worked on his minerals, and we gave him stuff to remove his heavy metals, and we gave him the homeopathic flu vaccine. And he came back about 6 weeks later, and he wasn't barking anymore. And a little bit of a twitch. And he was able to go back to school because he couldn't even be in school. He was able to go back to school, and he had become a happy kid. He's not perfect yet. I think he's going to heal, but he was poisoned. He was just poisoned. And that's what you see on the autistic scene, is that's what's wrong. And so it's a huge, I mean, it's a major problem for all of us. It wrecks the families, you know. So anyway, I thank you for
Will you
your...
let us know what you charge for a visit to go through the testing?
The testing is individual. The first visit charge, it's between an hour and a half, is $250. Most insurances don't cover most of the stuff we do. Some of the standard lab tests they do, but the other stuff they don't. It's individualized, so it just depends on...
Do they cover the price of your payment?
What's
Not
that?
just the lab test? Do they cover the price of the visit? Like,
I'm not a...
Blue Cross
we're not in
or
an
Blue-
insurance plan, so it
Yeah.
really depends on the insurance plan.
yeah. What if you have
Most of the stuff, you know, if you
PPO?
do a saliva test for hormones or a stool test for this stuff, some of them pay, some of them don't. It's not, I wouldn't count on it too much.
Yeah.
I've
That
got a question.
includes the lab test and everything, the 250.
No, the 250 is the visit charge.
So
The lab tests are
you-
separate.
And what happens during that? What do you get in that hour and a half visit?
Well, I try to figure out what's wrong with you. So it's a mixture of us going through we have like a 13-page form where you detail all your health history. And so I go through all of it and try to see, you know, what is going on. Then I do a very detailed physical exam. And then I tell you what I think we should do, and, you know, what kind of testing do we need, and what sort of supplements you should start with. And
He
and then you
actually
just-
talks to you and has time for you. He listens to you.
So if you come in with a pre-diagnosis from a different doctor,
Yeah.
do you go down that path, or?
Well, I just see, if you're happy and you're winning, you're probably not looking someplace else. You know, if you're seeing somebody and it's going well, you probably wouldn't change. So I'm pretty much take everything at sort of, let's look. Let's just
Put all
look.
the cards on the table.
Let's put all the cards on the table and see who's got what, or, you know, what you have. If you bring me all the lab work you've had, that's helpful, because I can say, oh, we don't need to do that, that's all done. It's not that. You know, it might be this. So that we can then, you know, it's a sort out. You know, there is a problem, and what are the, you know, why is that problem? What is going on with your body that you're in this situation?
If there's nothing wrong with you, like I feel good, I don't really feel like I have any issues, but can I do preventive, like would that be?
Well, preventive, a good deal of people we come on, like anti-aging,
Mhm.
or they're high-end athletes and they want more performance.
Mhm.
You know, if they can get another 100th of a second on a 100-meter freestyle, they're winning. So we have, you know, we have a bunch of world champions, motocross and football and baseball. And, you know, we have people who are, you know, but I mean, it's the same thing. They're not sick, but they want performance. They want best.
Bigger, stronger, faster.
Bigger, stronger, faster.
Okay, I would
Yes.
just say one other thing about his practice. He has someone in there that does pap smears and gynecological exams. It's not Dr. Minkoff, but he has a nurse practitioner, right?
Right, she's
And-
a specialist in women's stuff.
Right, and then he has thermography, so you can get your alternative, you know, you get mammograms, but
Oh,
in the
yeah,
holistic we
yeah,
get
yeah.
thermography,
Awesome,
right?
really?
Yep.
He has that there, so he has like everything right there in his center. I want to ask you, do you treat autism? Because you were talking about, you treat it there at the clinic?
Yep.
Because there was somebody else in here that has a grandchild with autism, so.
How many people do you come across that you're just like, sorry, there's not a thing I can do for you?
It usually takes a while. It's most often, they didn't do it.
Sure.
Now, it's not perfect.
Right.
But it's the percentage of people who win is very high. You know, I don't know, 80, 85%, something like that.
Okay.
Where they, you know, they felt like they really got help. And so it's a partnership. It's not a, it's sort of not a, it's take this script and you'll be fine. It really is, it's lifestyle. You know, it's
Detective work.
figuring out what makes your body tick the best, and then how to get that so that you can live and you can be as healthy as you can be. And live a long life without getting, these kinds of problems.
One thing that I really liked about Dr. Minkoff when I went to see him is that he didn't come across saying like it was his way or no way. Do you know, he allows you to have your opinion, he allows you to listen to your own body, and he listens to the suggestions that maybe things that you want to do, which there's like no ego there in this man. He just wants to work with you. His heart is to help you. He's not saying do it my way, or I'm not going to see you, or it has to be this way. You have to eat paleo, you have to do it. None of that. He wants to work with you. He wants to see you healthy, and that's something I really, really loved about him when I went to see him. And I went for what you're wanting to go for, just wanted to have better health. And then when we did some testing, we could see that I was deficient in some areas. So
It's interesting. I do these tests on myself every year, and you find stuff. Here, just another quick example.
Your body evolves.
Well, you pick up stuff. My fasting blood sugar, I like to keep it under 90. Okay. Well, it was 102. Like, I haven't changed my diet, haven't changed my exercise. Why is my blood sugar higher than it really should be? I don't know. It was time of the year to do this, one of these big battery tests for vitamin levels. It turned out that my chromium level was low. I don't know why it was low. I was taking, in the multivitamin I take, there's chromium, and maybe I was sweating more, or I don't know why, but my chromium level was low. Insulin is dependent on chromium. Insulin is the thing that keeps the blood sugar down. And I added chromium. Okay? I took sort of a lot more chromium for a while. And I retested my blood sugar, and my blood sugar was back down. Now that over time, with not a look, would have gotten me, I don't know, I could have sort of listed forever on, well, was it this, was it that, was it this, was it that? It turns out that I had developed a deficiency, I corrected the deficiency, and the body got better.
Why did you have the deficiency in the first place?
I don't know why.
But did it maintain? Did you fix it?
No, I fixed it and it's been fine.
So it hasn't been deficient since then. Interesting.
If you get angry, you can burn up all the vitamin C in your body instantaneously.
Really?
Really?
Then I better quit my job.
All right, thank you guys.
did you enjoy?